Hello, before jumping into the video, I want to say I got a lot of issues making this video because of the video informations were hard to find due to restrictions. I did my best to provide you all the necessary and important informations on this topic. If you enjoy the video, please subscribe, like, and comments. It helps a lot. Thank you so much. Now let's jump in. Imagine a family torn in two. They speak the same language, share the same ancestors, and cherish the same traditions. But they live in two worlds so different they might as well be on separate planets. One bustling with technology, pop culture, and global trade. The other locked in isolation, ruled by a single family dynasty and shrouded in secrecy. This is not fiction. It is the story of the Korean Peninsula. For over 70 years, North and South Korea have been trapped in a frozen conflict, a war without end. Today, we're going to journey through the entire history of this division. From the days when Korea was a single kingdom, through the tragedies of war, to the fragile and dangerous balance of the present day. For centuries, Korea was unified under its own dynasties, from the ancient Three Kingdoms to the long-lasting Joseon dynasty. The peninsula was culturally rich, advanced in literacy thanks to King Sejong's creation of Hangul, and deeply influenced by Confucian traditions. But by the late 19th century, the winds of imperialism swept through Asia. Korea found itself caught between competing powers, Qing China, Imperial Japan, and the Russian Empire. After the First Sino-Japanese War, Japan began exerting increasing control. By 1910, Korea was formally annexed by Japan. The Japanese colonial period would last 35 years, bringing rapid industrialization and infrastructure, but also brutal oppression. Korean language and culture were suppressed. Land was seized for Japanese settlers. Resistance movements, such as the March 1st Independence Movement of 1919, were met with harsh crackdowns. When Japan entered World War II, Koreans were forced into labor, and many were sent to fight for the Japanese military. But Japan's defeat in 1945 would bring neither peace nor unity. Instead, it set the stage for a deeper division. In August 1945, as World War II ended, Soviet forces moved into northern Korea while American forces landed in the south. With little preparation, US and Soviet officials hastily drew a line across the 38th parallel. This was meant to be temporary, a way to manage Japan's surrender, but it quickly hardened into something far more permanent. In the north, the Soviets backed Kim Il-sung, a guerrilla fighter who had resisted Japanese rule. In the south, the Americans supported Syngman Rhee, an anti-communist nationalist. By 1948, two separate governments had formed, each claiming to be the sole legitimate authority over all Korea. Tensions escalated. Political purges swept both sides. Armed clashes erupted along the border. Both leaders were determined to reunify the peninsula, but on their own terms. On June 25, 1950, North Korean troops crossed the 38th parallel in a massive surprise invasion, capturing Seoul within days. The United Nations, led by the United States, rushed to South Korea's defense. The war seesawed dramatically. UN forces pushed deep into the north, reaching the Yalu River and threatening China's border. Then, Chinese volunteer forces surged into the fight, driving the UN troops back below the 38th parallel. For 3 years, the Korean Peninsula became one of the most devastating battlefields of the 20th century. Entire cities were reduced to rubble. Civilians fled in the millions. Families were torn apart, often forever. By 1953, the front lines had barely moved from where they started. An armistice agreement was signed at Panmunjom. It created the demilitarized zone, a heavily fortified strip cutting Korea in two. But no peace treaty was ever signed. Technically, the Korean War has never ended. After the war, the two Koreas embarked on radically different journeys. South Korea, under US protection, was initially poor and politically unstable. But from the 1960s onwards, it began an astonishing economic transformation. Guided by authoritarian leaders at first, then later democratization in the late 1980s, South Korea became a modern, high-tech democracy, home to global brands, cultural exports like K-pop, and one of the world's largest economies. North Korea, under Kim Il-sung, built a centrally planned economy and a rigid political system centered on the Kim family cult of personality. The ideology of Jewish self-reliance became the state's guiding principle. While the North initially matched or even outpaced the South economically in the 1950s and 1960s, decades of isolation, mismanagement, and sanctions would lead to stagnation and hardship. By the 1990s, famine ravaged North Korea, killing hundreds of thousands. Yet the regime tightened its grip, investing heavily in military power, especially its nuclear program. Throughout the Cold War, the Korean Peninsula was a flashpoint. There were assassination attempts, espionage cases, and military clashes, including the 1968 Blue House raid, the seizure of the USS Pueblo, and deadly skirmishes at sea. Diplomatic efforts occasionally broke through the tension. The early 2000s saw historic summits between North and South Korean leaders under South Korea's Sunshine Policy, aiming for reconciliation. International talks, such as the 1994 Agreed Framework, sought to curb North Korea's nuclear ambitions. But progress was fragile. Agreements collapsed amid mutual mistrust, leadership changes, and missile and nuclear tests by the North. The nuclear issue became the central challenge, transforming the conflict from a regional standoff into a global security concern. Amid the geopolitics, the human tragedy is often overlooked. Millions of Koreans were separated from their families by the war and the impenetrable DMZ. Occasional reunions, tightly controlled and rare, brought both joy and heartbreak. Defectors risked their lives to escape the North, often traveling through China and Southeast Asia before reaching safety. Many speak of hunger, surveillance, and the loss of loved ones. The DMZ itself is a paradox, one of the most heavily militarized places on Earth, yet also a haven for wildlife that has flourished in the absence of human settlement. Why hasn't reunification happened? The reasons are complex. Politically, the two systems are incompatible. Economically, the gap is immense. Unifying would require enormous investment. Geopolitically, surrounding powers like China, the United States, Japan, and Russia each have competing interests in the peninsula's future. And then there's the nuclear question. North Korea sees its weapons as the ultimate guarantee of survival. For the South and its allies, they are a constant threat. The future remains uncertain. There are scenarios of cautious engagement, economic cooperation, or even eventual reunification. There are also risks of renewed conflict. For now, the Korean Peninsula stands as a living reminder of the Cold War. Two nations, one people, divided by history and hardened by decades of mistrust. The hope is that someday, the invisible line at the 38th parallel will fade away, and families will once again live under the same sky, in the same land, without fear of the past repeating itself. I hope this video taught you something about this long, unfinished conflict. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to comment what video do you want next?